Commander Jake Morrison stood at the wide window of Orbital Station Phoenix, watching Earth turn slowly below him. The blue and green planet looked peaceful in the morning sunlight. White clouds moved across the surface like cotton balls. Jake had seen this view 1,000 times, but it never got old. He was drinking his coffee when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed all over the command center. Officers ran to their stations. Jake dropped his coffee cup and rushed to the main display screen. What he saw there made his blood turn cold. Huge ships were coming out of hyperspace around Earth. These were not human ships. They were massive, bigger than any city on Earth. Their dark metal hulls looked like they could crush mountains. Strange red symbols glowed on their sides. "How many?" Jake asked the sensor officer. 200 ships around Earth, sir." More appearing, "At our other colonies." The young officer's voice shook. "Sir, they're everywhere. Every human world has alien ships around it." Jake felt his stomach drop. In his 20 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. The alien fleet was so large it blocked out the stars. Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared on the main screen. She was calling from Earth Defense Command. Her usually calm face looked worried. "All stations, this is Admiral Carter. We have a situation. Unknown alien vessels have surrounded all 12 human worlds. They are not responding to our communications." Jake opened a channel to his crew. "All hands to battle stations, this is not a drill." But before anyone could move, something strange happened. The alien ship started sending a signal. It was not like any human radio wave. The signal went straight into every computer, every screen, every communication device in human space at the same time. Then the alien appeared. The creature on the screen was tall and thin. It had 4 arms and skin that looked like gray metal. Its eyes were large and black. When it spoke, its voice was cold and without feeling. "People of Earth," the alien said. "I am Supreme Commander Vorth of the Valthari Empire. Your species has been chosen for incorporation into our domain." Jake felt the temperature in the room drop. Around him, his crew stood frozen, staring at the screen. "We have conquered 1,000 species across this galaxy," Vorth continued. "Each has found peace and purpose under our rule. You will do the same." The alien's image changed. Now it showed pictures of other worlds, other species. Jake saw creatures that looked like humans, but their eyes were empty. They worked in huge factories and mines. They built ships for their alien masters. They moved like robots without joy or hope. "This is what awaits you," Vorth said. "You will work for the glory of the Empire. Your children will serve our cause. Your worlds will feed our expansion across the stars." Jake's hands turned into fists. He had fought in 3 colonial wars. He had seen battle and death. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. "You have 72 hours to surrender," the alien commander said. "Open your governments to our forces. Prepare half of your population for transport to our labor worlds. Resistance will result in the complete elimination of your species. Riao." Transmission ended. The alien's face disappeared. The command center fell silent except for the hum of computers. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? How do you fight an enemy with 1,000 times more ships than you have? "Sir," called Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from the communication station. "I'm getting calls from every human world. The aliens gave the same message everywhere." Jake nodded. He opened a channel to Admiral Carter. "Admiral, this is Commander Morrison. Request immediate orders." Carter's face appeared on screen again. She looked older than she had just minutes before. "Jake, we're calling an emergency meeting of all military commanders. Report to Earth immediately." "Yes, ma'am." As Jake prepared to leave the station, he looked out the window one more time. The alien ships hung around Earth like dark storm clouds. Their weapons were pointed at the planet where 4 billion humans lived their daily lives, not knowing that everything was about to change. Dr. Nathan Brooks was in his laboratory when the message came. He was studying samples from a new planet when every screen in his lab showed the alien commander. Nathan was humanity's best expert on alien life, but he had never seen anything like the Valthari. After the message ended, Nathan immediately started analyzing the transmission. What he found made him sick. The aliens had not just sent a message. They had also sent detailed information about every conquered species in their empire. Nathan read through the files with growing horror. The Valthari did not just conquer other species. They changed them. They used advanced technology to alter their brain chemistry. Within one generation, the conquered people forgot they had ever been free. They became perfect slaves who loved their masters. They don't just want to rule us, Nathan said to his empty laboratory. They want to erase us. Meanwhile, General Ryan Clark was looking at military reports from across human space. The numbers were clear and terrible. Humanity had 800 military ships. The aliens had over 10,000. Human weapons could barely scratch alien armor. The enemy's shields could stop anything humans could throw at them. We can't win, he said to his staff. If we fight, they'll destroy us in hours. Captain Amy Rodriguez was aboard the UES Defiant when the ultimatum came. She was humanity's youngest ship captain, known for never backing down from a fight. But, as she looked at the alien fleet through her ship's cameras, she felt fear like never before. Captain, her first officer said, what are your orders? Amy looked at the tactical display. Her ship had enough firepower to level a city. Against the alien fleet, it would be like throwing rocks at a mountain. Hold position, she said. And pray that someone smarter than us can find a way out of this. Across human space, the same scene played out on every world. People looked up at the sky and saw death waiting for them. Parents held their children close. Leaders tried to think of solutions that did not exist. The 72-hour clock had started ticking. Humanity had 3 days to choose between slavery and extinction, but unknown to most people, there was a third option hidden in classified military files. An option so terrible that no one had ever wanted to use it. That was about to change. The emergency meeting took place in the deepest bunker beneath Geneva. Representatives from all 12 human worlds appeared on holographic displays around a massive table. President Maria Gonzalez sat at the head, her face showing the weight of 40 billion lives resting on her shoulders. We have 56 hours left, she said. I need options. Admiral Carter spoke first. Military resistance is suicide. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. One of their ships could destroy our entire fleet. General Clark nodded grimly. Our weapons can't even scratch their armor. Their shields absorb everything we throw at them. If we fight, humanity dies in less than a day. So we surrender? Asked Governor Pete Williams from New California Colony. We let them take half our people as slaves? Dr. Brooks stood up slowly. He had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now his face was pale. You don't understand what surrender means. I've analyzed their data files. The Valthari don't just make slaves, they remake entire species. He activated a holographic display showing brain scans. They use genetic modification and chemical treatments to change how conquered species think. Within 20 years, the slaves forget they were ever free. Within 50 years, they worship their alien masters. The room fell silent. President Gonzalez closed her eyes. So our choices are death or something worse than death. There might be a third option, said a quiet voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at Chief Engineer Tony Williams. He was an old man who had worked on humanity's greatest construction projects. Tony had built the fusion reactors that powered human colonies. Now he looked like he was about to be sick. Project Scorched Earth, Tony said. It's been classified for 30 years. Most of you don't know it exists. President Gonzalez frowned. I've never heard of any Project Scorched Earth. Tony walked to the display screen with slow, heavy steps. It was created after the Centauri War. Military planners were worried about what would happen if an enemy ever captured our colonies. They asked a simple question. How do you deny everything to an invader? He pulled up classified files that made several people gasp. Every human colony has massive fusion reactors at its core. They were built for terraforming and power generation, but they can be modified. The screen showed technical diagrams that looked like nightmares. If we overload all the reactors at the same time, we can make our worlds uninhabitable for thousands of years. The radiation will kill everything. No one can live there. No one can use the resources. General Clark stared at the plans. You're talking about destroying our own worlds. All 12 of them, Tony confirmed. We turn every human planet into a radioactive wasteland. The aliens get nothing. No slaves, no resources, no victory. Governor Susan Davis from Harvest Prime stood up angrily. That's insane. You're talking about killing everyone on every human world. Not everyone, said a new voice. Dr. Helen Murphy entered the room. She was 70 years old and had not been seen in public for 10 years. I designed Project Scorched Earth. We also designed Project Exodus. She activated another set of plans. Generation ships, massive vessels that can carry millions of people. We've had the blueprints for decades, we just never needed to build them. President Gonzalez studied the ship designs. How many people can they carry? If we use every available ship and work around the clock, we might save 10% of humanity. 4 billion people. The number hit the room like a physical blow. Governor Williams put his head in his hands. We're talking about abandoning 36 billion people. We're talking about saving 4 billion, Dr. Murphy corrected. The alternative is saving 0. Captain Rodriguez appeared on one of the communication screens. She was calling from her ship in Earth orbit. I've been listening to this conversation. Are you seriously considering turning our worlds into radioactive dust? The Valthari want our people as slaves and our worlds as resources, Tony explained. If we deny them both, we win. Not the way we wanted to win, but we don't lose either. Admiral Carter was studying the technical data. How long would it take to modify the reactors? 48 hours if we start immediately, Tony said. The evacuation would take longer. We'd need every ship in human space working at maximum capacity. Dr. Brooks was running calculations on his tablet. The radiation from 12 simultaneous core explosions would be visible from other star systems. The aliens would know immediately what we did. Good, said General Clark. Let them know. Let the whole galaxy know that humanity chose fire over chains. President Gonzalez looked around the room. Every face showed the same expression of horror and determination. We're talking about the most terrible decision in human history. The destruction of our entire civilization to save a fraction of our people. It's not destruction, said Dr. Murphy quietly. It's transformation. We lose everything we were to become something the aliens never expected. A species that won't be conquered. Governor Davis was crying now. My world has been my family's home for 4 generations. My grandfather terraformed those planes with his own hands. And now your grandfather's sacrifice gives you the power to choose, Tony said. Stay and become slaves or leave and stay free. The debate continued for hours. Some argued that any chance of survival was better than mass suicide. Others insisted that life as Valthari slaves was not life at all. The clock kept ticking down. Finally, President Gonzalez called for quiet. I need to know. Who supports Project Scorched Earth? One by one, hands rose around the table. Not everyone voted yes, but enough did. The decision was made. God help us all, the president whispered. We're going to burn our worlds to save our souls. Admiral Carter immediately began issuing orders. Every military engineer was to report to planetary core facilities. Every available ship was to begin evacuation procedures. The largest operation in human history was about to begin as the meeting ended. Tony Williams stood alone looking at the technical displays. In 48 hours, he would push the button that would destroy everything humanity had built among the stars. But maybe, just maybe, the survivors would build something better. Commander Morrison received his orders an hour later. Begin immediate. Evacuation of all non-essential personnel from Earth. Destination. The generation ships being constructed at Luna shipyards. Jake looked out at the alien fleet still surrounding Earth. Soon those ships would be orbiting a dead world. The thought should have made him sad. Instead, it made him proud. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The evacuation began immediately. Every human ship in space received emergency orders to return to their home worlds and begin loading refugees. Captain Paul Martinez was commanding the transport ship Liberty Bell when the orders came through. He looked at his cargo manifest and shook his head. His ship was designed to carry 5,000 passengers. Now he had to fit 15,000 people inside. Strip out everything non-essential, he told his crew. Furniture, recreation areas, even the officers' mess. We need every cubic meter of space. His first officer, Lieutenant Bob Chen, stared at the numbers on his screen. Captain, even if we pack people like cargo, we can't fit 15,000 in here. Then we'll figure out how to fit 16,000, Martinez replied, because we're not leaving anyone behind. On the surface of New California, the evacuation was chaos. Families stood in long lines at the spaceports, each person allowed to carry only one small bag. Children cried as parents tried to explain why they had to leave their homes forever. Governor Pete Williams walked through the crowds, trying to keep people calm. A woman grabbed his arm. Her name was Betty Johnson, and she had lived on New California for 40 years. "Governor, is it true?" she asked. "Are we really going to destroy our world?" Williams looked into her frightened eyes. He wanted to lie, to give her hope. But there was no time for lies now. "Yes, Betty. We're going to make sure the aliens get nothing." Betty started crying. "My husband is buried here, my children were born here, this is our home. And because of your sacrifice, other children will grow up free," Williams said gently. "That's worth everything." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Kim Stewart was deep underground on Earth, working in the planetary core facility. She wore a heavy radiation suit as she and her team modified the fusion reactors. The work was dangerous and precise. One mistake could trigger an explosion that would kill them all before the planned time. "How are we doing?" she asked her chief technician, Sergeant Mike Davis. "The modifications are 60% complete," Davis replied. "But ma'am, once we activate these changes, there's no going back. The reactors will overload in exactly 6 hours. Stewart nodded. "That's the point, Sergeant. Make sure the timing is perfect. All 12 worlds have to explode at the same time." Above ground, Dr. Alex Turner was dealing with a different problem. Many civilians refused to leave their homes. On the farming world of Harvest Prime, entire families had decided to stay behind rather than abandon their land. Turner found farmer Joe Wilson sitting on his porch, watching the sunset over fields his family had planted 3 generations ago. Wilson's wife and children had already left on an evacuation ship, but the old man refused to go. "This is my home, Doc," Wilson said. "I planted these fields with my own hands. My father and grandfather are buried in that hill over there. I won't run." "Joe, you'll die if you stay here," Turner said. "The radiation will kill everything on this planet." Wilson smiled sadly. "Maybe that's how it should be. Maybe some things are worth dying for." Turner wanted to argue, but he understood. Some people would rather die free than live as refugees. He shook Wilson's hand and moved on to the next farm. In space, Admiral Carter coordinated the massive evacuation fleet. Ships of every size were working together. Military cruisers carried civilians alongside cargo freighters and luxury yachts. Even small personal spacecraft were loaded with families trying to escape. "Admiral," reported Captain Rodriguez from the UES Defiant, "the Valthari are getting suspicious. Their scout ships are moving closer to our planets." Carter studied the tactical display. "How much time do we have?" "Maybe 12 hours before they figure out what we're doing. If they attack before the evacuation is complete." "They won't," Carter said firmly. "They want us alive. Dead slaves are worthless to them." But the Valthari were indeed getting curious. Supreme Commander Vorth watched the human evacuation from his flagship. His tactical officer, a 4-armed creature named Klex, analyzed the movement patterns. "Supreme Commander, the humans are moving large numbers of people off their worlds. This could be preparation for resistance." Vorth's black eyes studied the displays. "No. If they were preparing to fight, they would be moving weapons and soldiers, not children and civilians. They are simply accepting defeat early. Some species do this to minimize casualties. Should we accept their surrender now?" "No," Vorth decided. "Let them finish their preparations. Defeated enemies are easier to control than desperate ones." Back on Earth, engineer Tony Williams was making final preparations in the command bunker. Banks of computers showed the status of all 12 planetary reactors. Green lights indicated that the modifications were nearly complete. Soon, all the lights would turn red. President Gonzalez stood beside him holding the detonation codes. "Tony, are you sure about the timing?" 30 minutes after activation, all 12 worlds will begin their final chain reaction, Williams explained. "The explosions will be simultaneous. The aliens won't have time to stop any of them. And our people. The last evacuation ships will clear the danger zone with 5 minutes to spare. Everyone who can be saved will be saved." Dr. Brooks was monitoring alien communications from a listening post on the moon. The Valthari were still confident, still planning for their easy victory. They had no idea what humanity was about to do. "They're discussing which humans to take as slaves first," Brooks reported. "They want children and young adults. They think older people are less useful. They're about to learn that they get nothing," said General Clark. As the hours passed, the evacuation continued. Ship after ship lifted off from human worlds, carrying refugees toward the generation ships being assembled at the edge of each star system. The generation ships were massive, ugly vessels built for survival, not comfort, but they represented hope. Commander Morrison was piloting one of the last transports away from Earth. In his cargo hold were thousands of genetic samples, cultural artifacts, and historical records. If humanity survived, they would need these things to remember who they had been. "Sir," his co-pilot said, "we're receiving the final evacuation signal. All non-essential personnel are off the surface." Morrison looked back at Earth one last time. The planet looked peaceful and beautiful, spinning slowly in space. In a few hours, it would be a burning ball of radiation. "Set course for the generation ships," he ordered, "and may God forgive us for what we're about to do." The clock showed 4 hours until detonation. Across human space, the last evacuation ships were racing toward safety. Behind them, on 12 worlds, small teams of volunteers remained to ensure the final sequence would proceed perfectly. Lieutenant Colonel Stewart was among those staying behind. Someone had to manually activate the final countdown. Someone had to make sure the aliens got exactly what they deserved. Nothing. President Gonzalez stood alone in the command bunker, her hand resting on the activation switch. Through the quantum communicator, she could hear the voices of the other world leaders confirming their evacuation status. New Tokyo here. 8 million evacuated. 1 million volunteers remaining to oversee final procedures. Olympus Colony reporting. Full evacuation complete. Core team standing by. Aurora Station ready. Population secure. Reactors prepared for overload. One by one, the 12 human worlds reported in. 36 billion people had been moved to safety. 4 billion remained behind, most of them volunteers who had chosen to stay and ensure the plan worked perfectly. "All stations, this is President Gonzalez," she said into the communicator. "In 60 minutes, we will execute Scorched Earth Protocol. May history remember that we chose freedom over slavery." Above Earth, Commander Morrison piloted the very last transport ship away from the planet. His cargo bay was filled with Earth's most precious treasures. Seeds from every plant that grew on humanity's birth world. Recordings of every song, every story, every piece of art that humans had ever created. If humanity survived, these things would help them remember their heritage. "Commander," his co-pilot said, "we're receiving final clearance. All civilian transports are now beyond the radiation danger zone." Morrison looked at his instruments. Earth was falling behind them, a blue and white marble growing smaller by the minute. "Signal the fleet. Operation Exodus is complete. All that remains is the fire." The Valthari were becoming impatient. Supreme Commander Vorth had been expecting humanity's surrender for hours. Instead, he watched human ships fleeing in all directions. His tactical officer Klex looked confused. "Supreme Commander, perhaps we should demand immediate surrender. The humans appear to be stalling." Vorth studied the displays showing human fleet movements. "They are running like frightened animals. Let them exhaust themselves. Fear makes conquest easier." "Should we pursue their fleeing ships?" "No. We want The humans alive and working, not dead in space. Once we control their worlds, the ships will return on their own. But Vorth was wrong. The human ships had no intention of returning. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Lieutenant Colonel Stewart made final adjustments to the fusion reactor controls. She wore a full radiation suit, but she knew it would not save her. When the reactor overloaded, nothing could survive the explosion. "Sergeant Davis," she called to her second-in-command, "confirm all safety systems are disabled." "Confirmed, ma'am. When you activate that switch, the reactor will overload in exactly 30 minutes. Stewart looked around the control room. Her team of 20 volunteers stood at their stations, ready to die for humanity's freedom. "Gentlemen, it has been an honor serving with you." "The honor is ours, Colonel," Davis replied. "We're about to make history." Similar scenes played out on all 12 human worlds. Engineers and soldiers who had volunteered to stay behind made final preparations. They checked and double-checked every system. This plan had to work perfectly. On New California, Captain Martinez was overseeing the last group of holdouts. Families who had refused to leave until the very end were finally boarding evacuation ships. An old woman named Mary Wilson was crying as she left her home. 60 years I've lived here," she said. 60 years of memories in that house." Martinez helped her onto the transport. "Ma'am, your memories are going with you. The house is just wood and metal. Your life is what matters." As the transport lifted off, Mary looked down at her neighborhood one last time. In 30 minutes, it would all be radioactive dust. President Gonzalez received confirmation that all evacuation ships were clear. "Tony, are the reactors ready?" Engineer Williams checked his instruments. "All 12 worlds show green lights. Reactors are modified and ready for overload. Just waiting for your signal, Madam President." Gonzalez closed her eyes and thought about the decision that would define humanity forever. In a few minutes, she would destroy everything her species had built among the stars, but she would also ensure that humanity remained free. "Execute Scorched Earth Protocol," she said. Williams entered the activation codes. Across human space, fusion reactors that had powered colonies for centuries began their final, terrible purpose. The first sign was a deep rumbling that came from the core of each world. Lieutenant Colonel Stewart felt it through the soles of her boots as Earth's reactor began to overload. Warning lights flashed red throughout the underground facility. "Reactor overload initiated," Sergeant Davis reported. "Core temperature rising. Beyond safe parameters. Containment failure in 28 minutes. Similar reports came from all 12 worlds. The reactors were working exactly as designed, building toward explosions that would crack planets in half. The Valthari noticed the energy readings first. Commander Vorth was reviewing invasion plans when his science officer rushed to his command chair. "Supreme Commander, we're detecting massive energy buildups on all human worlds. Their planetary reactors are going critical." Vorth stood up quickly. "Explain." "The fusion reactors are overloading simultaneously. If they explode, the worlds will become uninhabitable for thousands of years." For the first time since arriving in human space, Vorth felt something like fear. "Can we stop the overloads?" "Not from here. Someone would have to shut down each reactor manually from the planetary surface." Vorth's forearms moved frantically over his control panel. "Send landing forces to all human worlds immediately. Stop those reactors." But it was too late. The Aidir, Valthari ships were too far from the planets. Their landing craft could not reach the surface in time. On Earth, Stewart watched the countdown timer reach its final minutes. The reactor core was glowing white-hot, contained only by magnetic fields that were rapidly failing. 10 minutes to core breach," Davis announced. "All personnel should evacuate to minimum safe distance." Stewart smiled. "Sergeant, there is no safe distance from what's about to happen." The evacuation fleet watched from deep space as the human worlds prepared to die. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship, monitoring communications from all 12 planets. "This is New Tokyo. Core team, 2 minutes to detonation. It has been an honor. Olympus Colony here. Reactor critical. See you on the other side. Aurora Station final transmission. Tell the universe that we chose freedom." One by one, the voices fell silent as the volunteer teams were consumed by the fires they had created. Then the explosions began. Earth died. First, the planet's core reactor exceeded critical mass and erupted like a newborn star. The explosion split the planet's crust and sent waves of superheated plasma into space. The beautiful blue world became a ball of radioactive fire visible from neighboring star systems. Within seconds, 11 other worlds followed. New California exploded in a burst of light that outshone its sun. Harvest Prime's agricultural plains became seas of molten rock. Aurora Station's orbital facilities were vaporized instantly. The Valthari fleet, caught too close to the dying worlds, suffered massive casualties. Half their ships were destroyed by the radiation and debris. The others fled in panic, their crews unable to understand what they had witnessed. Commander Morrison watched from the generation ship as Earth burned behind them. Tears ran down his face as he saw humanity's birth world consumed by fire. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a message from the Valthari fleet." Supreme Commander Vorth's image appeared on screen. The alien looked shaken and confused. "What have you done?" Vorth demanded. "You have destroyed your own worlds, rather than accept our rule." Morrison wiped his eyes and looked directly at the alien commander. "We have shown you that humanity will never bow to any master. We would rather burn our worlds to ash than let you have them." "You are insane. No rational species destroys itself." "We didn't destroy ourselves," Morrison replied. "We saved ourselves. And we've taught you something important. Some things are worth more than life itself." The transmission ended. The Valthari fleet limped away from the burning ruins of human space, their invasion force cut in half, their confidence shattered. Behind them, 12 worlds burned with the fury of dying stars, humanity's message to the galaxy written in fire across the cosmos. 5 years had passed since the burning of the 12 worlds. The human refugee fleet drifted through empty space, following long-range sensors toward distant stars that might offer new homes. The generation ships were crowded and uncomfortable, but they carried something more precious than comfort. They carried hope. Captain Martinez stood in the observation deck of the Liberty Bell, watching stars move slowly past the windows. His ship had become home to 15,000 refugees who had once lived on New California. The overcrowding had been terrible at first, but humans were good at adapting. They had learned to live together in small spaces. "Captain," called his navigator, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, "we're receiving reports from the scout ships. They found something." Martinez hurried to the bridge. On the main screen, he saw images from a probe that had been exploring a distant star system. 3 planets orbited a yellow sun. 2 of them showed signs that they could support human life. "How far away?" Martinez asked. 18 months at current speed, Kim replied. "The planets have water and oxygen. We could live there with minimal terraforming." For the first time in years, Martinez smiled. "Signal Admiral Carter. Tell her we found our new home." Meanwhile, Dr. Brooks was working in his laboratory aboard the flagship. He had spent 5 years studying intercepted Valthari communications, learning how the alien empire was reacting to humanity's sacrifice. What he discovered amazed him. "Admiral," he called to Carter over the ship's communication system, "you need to see this." Carter arrived at his lab a few minutes later. Brooks showed her translated messages from across Valthari space. "The aliens are calling us the Firebringers," Brooks explained. "They've never encountered a species that chose death over slavery. It's causing problems throughout their empire." Carter read the translations with growing excitement. Their subject species are asking questions? More than that, some are rebelling. The Korthak people destroyed 3 slave factories last month. The Nexari have stopped reporting to their Valthari overseers. Dozens of conquered worlds are refusing to work. Brooks pulled up more reports. The Valthari military is stretched thin. They're fighting rebellions on hundreds of worlds, all because those species heard what humanity did. Carter felt something she had not experienced in years. Pride. "We didn't just save ourselves. We started a revolution." On another generation ship, engineer Williams was training young people to build the new human civilization. Among his students was a teenage girl named Lisa Parker, whose parents had died in the evacuation from Earth. She was brilliant with technology and eager to learn. "Mr. Williams," she asked during a lesson about fusion reactors, "why did our people destroy the worlds? Couldn't we have fought the aliens instead?" Williams looked at the girl's earnest face. "How do you explain the hardest decision in human history to someone who was only 13 when it happened? Lisa, fighting would have meant everyone dies. Running away and leaving our worlds intact would have meant the aliens got everything they wanted. But what we did sent a message." "What message?" "That freedom is worth any price. That some things matter more than life itself. And that message is spreading across the galaxy." In the deepest parts of space, automated beacons continued, broadcasting from the ruins of the 12 worlds. The radioactive planets still glowed with deadly fire, but their communication systems kept working. They sent out humanity's story in every language, telling the galaxy what happened and why. These messages reached enslaved species on distant worlds. They heard about humans who chose to burn their planets rather than submit. Some species had never imagined that resistance was possible. Now they began to dream of freedom. The Valthari Empire was discovering that ruling a galaxy was much harder when your subjects stopped believing you were invincible. Supreme Commander Vorth had been demoted after his failure to conquer humanity. The new commanders found themselves fighting wars on dozens of fronts. 10 years after the burning, the human fleet finally reached the new star system. The 3 planets were even better than the scout reports had suggested. The largest world had vast oceans and continents perfect for human settlements. The colonists named it New Earth. Commander Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the surface of New Earth and breathed air that had never known pollution or war. Around him, prefabricated buildings were rising as humans began their second chance at civilization. "It's beautiful," said Dr. Murphy, who had lived to see humanity's new beginning. Despite her advanced age, "Our people died for this moment." Morrison nodded. "They died so their children could be free." The new human colonies grew quickly. Technology advanced by the necessity of survival made their ships and weapons better than anything the old worlds had possessed. More importantly, their culture had been strengthened by sacrifice. These humans understood the true value of freedom. 20 years passed. The Valthari Empire continued to crumble as more species rebelled. The aliens who had once conquered 1,000 worlds found themselves retreating to their home systems, fighting desperately to hold on to what remained of their empire. President Jennifer Adams, who had been elected leader of the new human government, received a message that shocked everyone. It came from a group of former Valthari slaves calling themselves the Free Alliance. "People of humanity," the message said, "your sacrifice 20 years ago saved not just your species but dozens of others. The Firebringers have become a symbol of hope across the galaxy. We ask you to join us in finishing what you started." Admiral Carter, now an old woman but still sharp, advised the president, "They want our help in the final war against the Valthari Empire." "Should we help them?" Adams asked. Carter thought about all the humans who had died to make this moment possible. "Our people didn't burn 12 worlds just to hide in a corner of the galaxy. They did it to show everyone that freedom is possible." The human fleet that emerged from the new Earth system 5 years later was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Ships powered by advanced fusion reactors and armed with weapons designed by people who understood that some fights were worth everything. They joined the Free Alliance in the final battle against the Valthari Empire. The war lasted 3 years, but the outcome was never in doubt. Species that had been slaves for generations fought with the fury of people who had finally learned they could be free. When the last Valthari stronghold fell, representatives from 100 worlds gathered to create a new galactic government. They called it the Freedom Confederation, and its founding principle was simple. Never again would any species be forced to choose between slavery and extinction. 50 years after the burning of the 12 worlds, Admiral Morrison's granddaughter stood in the ruins of what had once been Earth. The planet was still radioactive, still glowing with deadly fire. But automated monuments had been built in orbit, telling the story of humanity's choice. "Grandmother," the young woman asked her companion, "was it worth it? All those people who died?" The old woman, who had been a child during the evacuation, smiled sadly. "Look around you, dear. Look at the galaxy we live in now. Every free world, every species that chooses its own destiny, every child born without a master. They all exist because your ancestors chose fire over chains." In the deepest space, the automated beacons still broadcast their eternal message, the story of a species that refused to kneel, that turned their worlds to dust rather than submit, that taught the galaxy the true meaning of freedom. The message would continue forever, carried by radio waves through the cosmic dark, ensuring that humanity's defiance would echo through eternity. They had lost everything to save everyone, and in the end, that made them immortal.